Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I am Joel A. Erickson. I am joined by Nate Atkins. Nate is not at the track this week, even though it is race week. He will be at the track on Sunday, correct?
Yep, I'll be there. Second year in a row, trying out the Indy 500. So I'm actually pretty excited for it. Last year was my first time I'd ever gone to something like that. So
this is May, I believe the saying. This is May. And for the most part, what we've learned about May this year in Indianapolis is the Colts are. I would say this is fairly out of the ordinary for my time here, but it's for good reasons. That the Colts haven't always had a ton of competition in May over the last however many years. The Pacers weren't still in the playoffs like they are now. We're taping this on Thursday. They're getting ready to play Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. So you've got the Pacers in the playoffs. The Fever have Caitlin Clark, who is maybe like one of the top 5 biggest stars in sports in America. So they're off to a rough start, but interest in what she's doing hasn't died down. And then obviously there's the race, the only race that matters in Indiana, is going on at the same time. So it's been a very busy May from a sports standpoint in Indianapolis, and that's kind of fun. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I feel like right now with all that's going on, which all that stuff's very positive and fun and interesting for the city, that, like you said, isn't always normally here. The only way for the Colts to kind of leap onto the radar amid all this would be either something very fun or very bad. Like they could either sign Justin Simmons.
So just before Nate gets into this, just know if something bad happens, it's Nate's fault. I just want that out there. I want that out there before Nate finishes his thought. I don't.
See, I'm wishing something bad now that I'm like just doing the race stuff for the month. So then, I have a little bit of PTSD from last year at this time when they had a starter suspended for a year for gambling, and that is not the way you want to get on the radar. So a quiet off season in a way can be a good thing. It's also all of last off season was noisy for the Colts because it was all this organizational change, and there's excitement with getting Anthony Richardson and a new coach, but it was also a sign of what they were coming out of the year before and where they're coming out of for 5 years now. So I think what we'll get into on this podcast is just the getting to see the building of something that's actually continuing from last year into this year. And that part of the Colts I've never experienced because I got here midseason 2021. And that's when they were moving off Carson Wentz and searching for a quarterback, landing on Matt Ryan. Also had a new defense coordinator. And then last year was new head coach, new quarterback, new offense coordinator, and all of that. This year, like we've talked about before, I think they've added one starter since last year ended. And that's very interesting.
You're leading me into saying something that's almost is probably worse than what you just said, which is the last time that the Colts were what's the right word here? The last time that the Colts had this much continuity year over year was 2018 going into 2019. At this time of the year.
It's all about PTSD.
Yeah. Yep. Ever since then, there's been a new quarterback. There's been coaching change, but I mean the quarterback changes year over year carry the most weight, I think, of anything in that turmoil. But yeah, that's the last time is 2018 going into 2019, and then it turned out to not have continuity long after we realized it. So, knock on wood, that doesn't happen again. Going back before that, I mean, you're getting back to like the time before I started covering the team. I mean, you're going to like 2015 or 2016 when there's no organizational change, no Andrew Luck is coming back as the starter, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's been a while since you've had this kind of offseason. And we talked about this has kind of been floating around a little bit. I think the Colts kind of like that they're flying under the radar. I think they like that no one is that people aren't talking about them a ton. I think they feel pretty good about what they've done with the roster, even if maybe from the outside people don't. And they kind of like.
Are you saying they're doing like 3D chess by like not playing free agency? Everyone will like forget about them and not be into them, and like the secret weapon. So really, the free agent they signed is the ones they didn't sign. That's the secret curveball.
That is way, way deeper than I had thought about it. But yeah,
it'd be a great spin after the year of like, oh, this is all part of the plan. I'd love it if Chris Ballard did that.
We didn't do anything so people would sleep on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just there's obviously we're joking around, but I think I buy it. A lot of their approach with this and the emphasizing continuity and not shaking it up and the trust our guys thing. I think you could argue it makes sense that most of the places they're doing it, especially with the idea of building the passing game that way, building the offense out, getting star players back and just healthy. There's one position I don't think it makes any sense with the way that they're talking about it. Let me just say, not the most ringing quotes I've seen about the free safety position the last couple of weeks, which is a position that I don't hear anybody talking glowingly about, whether it's inside, outside the building. It's not a position they were happy with last year. It's not a position they trusted last year. It's a position that has the most available guys on the market. And here we are. So I don't know. That's very interesting to me. And I don't know what to say beyond that because still, as we still tape this here almost into June, Justin Simmons and Quandre Diggs are out there. And as we talked about, some beat writers podcast in this country is going to change where they're going to talk about a new starting free safety that wasn't there entering this time of year. And based on track records, you'd think it's very unlikely that it would be the Colts. But also if you talked about a team that's trying to make the playoffs and has one big hole at that position and especially needs a veteran, they seem like the most likely fit. So it's just very interesting that we're in this spot. Not surprising, but very at some point I just wonder, like, why not? And I almost wonder if there are people in the building wondering why not.
I mean, you're right about the free safety position. That people have defended the corner position more stringently, from a coaching, general managing standpoint. People have defended the cornerback position more stringently than they have free safety, which is maybe a little surprising.
Well, I think it's that. And I also think that you could and people have put down the options, the alternatives to fixing that position. There isn't a Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs player at that spot. The one that you could go out and make that case for was L'Jarius Sneed. We've been over and over and through that, and everything that was a totally different cost as being part of a trade. So, I mean, you can certainly scrutinize how they feel about that, but yeah, the sense I've always gotten is that they think there's more to those young corners than what we've seen. They're guys that they played last year outside of early in the year, very early on, they kind of let Juju Brents practice before he played. But from like October on, they played the guys that they're believing in as much as they could. That's not the case at free safety. Whoever they put out there, they're going to tell us at various points in the past 2 years, we stopped believing in them. And really the way that they're describing Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas is almost more just in hopeful terms. And I think both of those guys have shown flashes, and they could be good players. I don't get the sense from the organization that they actually believe that they are, or that they always planned on them being that. It's almost more like, well, we hope it works out, and that's a little dicey.
Well, and you've made this point many, many times before, so we don't really need to rehash it too much. But like the fact that they don't know what they have in Nick Cross, who was the free safety yesterday when we were at Wednesday's OTA with Julian Blackman. is their own fault. They took a very long time to make the move. He didn't end up playing that many snaps, and that's really on them because Rodney Thomas was not playing well. They could have made the move earlier. He ended up playing 292 snaps last season defensively. Really just 3 starts, and then 3 games where he played like a rotational role. It's not a lot of snaps. It's only 292 snaps is not very many. He's got some more from the year before, but they're at the wrong position. They're at strong safety. I still think, and you probably still think, that if they don't do anything else with it, that he's the most likely person to win that job. And it seemed like he was in front to start. But yeah, I mean, free safety, especially in a defense that's going to play a lot of zone and ask people to be over the top. I mean, we saw in the game against the Texans what happens if the safety's not where they're supposed to be in those spots. So free safety is definitely a thing. It just doesn't seem like the Colts are going to make a move there. They're not typically the type to make a big move at this point in the summer. We've kind of passed that spot. Like even a couple weeks ago, we could still say, well, they signed this guy at this time, or mid-April. They say they signed this guy at this time. That isn't. We're past that now. We've moved past that. We're getting close now. As we tape this, we were just talking before we came on here. The Colts have an organized team activity next week for 3 days, and then the mandatory minicamp is June 4th through the 6th, and that's it.
Yeah,
they break, we break, everybody breaks until the start of training camp. So, yeah, very, very difficult in terms of knowing what to get out of that position, and you know, like we've been saying, just not quite the stringent defense there that they've given their players at corner. Where I still think at corner, there's a lot of ways corner could go badly for them if without a signing, but the messaging from the team on corner has been much better than it has been at free safety.
Yeah, at corner you can scrutinize the fact that they believe in what they're doing. It's still a little odd to me that they haven't signed a veteran of some sort at that spot, even a backup, possible rotational guy. It's just such a young room, and I don't know that, you know, they've made the argument this offseason that, well, they're not as young as they were last year. Yeah, but they were way too young last year. So at what point are they experienced enough to get you where you want to go? It's just one of those things where, like, I could buy their argument for that position better if we didn't have questions at safety. If it was Julian Blackmon and Justin Simmons at safety, I think you could much more get on board with the idea that they're going to be young and a little inexperienced at corner, but it's like the guys above them are so good and so experienced. Within the pass rush, they've beefed that up quite a bit. And the run defense you can really buy as well. But it's like it's that combination of lacking corner, lacking safety. And I just wonder what's going to happen if either Julian Blackmon or Kenny Moore gets hurt. Well, Julian did lay down the stretch last year, and it really fell apart on them. But like they really, from a health standpoint and production standpoint, got the most that they could ask for out of those two players based on what they were coming into last year. And so what if that isn't what you get this year? It's just all stuff we talked about all offseason because it hasn't really changed in any way. And the further it goes on, it just becomes it seems more likely that this is just what it's going to be, which is just, it's a gamble. This is this year's gamble. Last year was the offensive line.
And the corners.
And it worked. And corners, which did not work. So they were one of two. I guess if there's two positions this year, maybe they go one of two. But they could go 0 of 2. And if they go 0 of 2, then they're probably not making the playoffs. So it's a weird, it feels like a team that it is flying on the radar in terms of like their national noise. But to me, they're coming off a little pretty boomer bust as far as if this actually hits and all the stuff they're talking about works and Nick Cross breaks out and their corners are pretty good. I mean, you could talk yourself into a lot of things with this team if they have even a competent secondary with what they have in the pass rush, run defense, and then the potential of their offense. But on the flip side, if they can't cover anybody at all, like it could be a worse secondary than it was last year, I think, based on what happens with Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon and how healthy and available they are. That's where, against a much, much tougher slate of opposing quarterbacks, that's where like the bottom could fall out. So as we sit here right now, based on what they have at this moment, you could talk me into this team going 11-6 or 7-10. I really think that's the range right now.
Yeah, I had to do this last week because the schedule came out. Let's go real quick. Do you have any big thoughts on the schedule?
Selfishly or about the Colts? I will say on kind of both levels, I am really tired of them getting a late bye week. I don't know why they're always getting.
I'm a big fan. Personally, I'm a big fan of late bye weeks.
Oh, I'm not. But I know players are not. Like, they want the midseason break. And I'm especially not. Well, maybe this year will be different. Last year, I felt like we did a whole season in training camp. And then we did our second season, and then we got the bye late. So that was just a personal thing. But players, I mean, they're really hobbled by that bye week. And last year, actually, I think it worked out really luckily for the Colts because they got 3 bye weeks in a row. They got the Panthers, Patriots, and then the bye week.
Ooh,
so that right as they were hobbled and falling apart, they faced a team that can't beat them anyway. So that was really nice. But that was kind of players are always, they always tell you the first thing they look at on the schedule is the bye week. So it's the first thing I've been trained to look at. Beyond that, I don't know that I have a lot of takeaways. I think it's interesting. Like I often look at like what time of year they're going to certain places. It's just interesting for a dome team, which I've covered now 2 straight teams like you have. So going to Lambeau Field in week 2 is, that is a lot better than going there.
Green Bay is very nice in September.
Yeah. Typically. So that is interesting. It's very like that. It's interesting in a couple ways for that because it's like it's so early for Anthony Richardson, the new offense. It's so early for this young secondary against what should be a pretty good Packers passing attack. It's just one of those very interesting early tests. So yeah, I mean, that one kind of jumped out. And other than that, I also always look for when is their automatic loss in Jacksonville coming. And that's week 5. So, that I've seen some people joke that like they should put that week 1 every year. So then you can get like the opener and the at Jacksonville curses out in the same one. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, yeah, it's I do think one thing that's nice for them is the way that they end the season. The final few games here or with a bye sandwiched in are Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars. There's a lot tougher ways you could end.
Yeah, it's a very once you get through the middle portion of the schedule, the 4 road games in 5 weeks, going from October 6th to just into November, that to me is the real grinder of the part of the season.
Oh yeah.
At Jacksonville, at Tennessee, home against Miami, then at Houston and at Minnesota. Now, a couple of those teams, I don't think Minnesota's going to be any good. I don't think Tennessee is going to be very good, just being honest. But
what's crazy is the home games
in 5 weeks is a lot.
Yeah. And the home games sandwiched in that stretch are Dolphins, Bills, and then a few weeks later, the Lions. So it's like there's not a lot. It's hard to find a break in there.
Yes, around the road games, you've got some of the toughest home games of the year. I think from a weather standpoint, I didn't put this in my observations, but like starting really after Thanksgiving, they have 3 road games, and there's possibility for weather in all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really expecting bad weather, like super cold weather in New York on November 17th for the Jets game. It's still a little early for like New York to get bad, but December 1st at New England, December 15th at Denver, where once the temperature starts going down in Denver, anything could happen. just because of the way the stuff moves off the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, December 28th or 29th at New York. Now, a couple of years ago, when we were there on New Year's, where we were in there on New Year's, it was like 65 degrees. So maybe
that helped the Colts out so much that day.
It did not. But yeah, some potential for some weather in the back end of the schedule. I think we told people we were going to rank the road destinations. So we have to give that to them.
Oh yeah.
Do we go bottom up? I think we go bottom up.
Yeah, I think we do.
So
I'll let you go ahead and make the first choice for the one at the bottom, because it's going to be real shock to everybody.
Yeah, number 10 for me, because I'm going to throw the Cincinnati game in here just for the fun of it. Number 10 for me, and really number 4,872 for me, is Jacksonville. So many cities I'd rather go to. Just don't need it. I don't need it.
Yeah, I mean,
what could I say that I haven't said before on this pod about how much I dislike going there? I don't know. I think if you listen to this pod, but it's 10 and it's really 31 is what it is, or 30, since the Jets and Giants play in the same stadium. It's 30 on the list. That's the worst. There's 30 teams ahead of them that I would rather go to. It will be the last on my schedule rankings every year.
I hope they still have the highway signs that were ripped off in a storm and just propped up, guiding us to the stadium. That was a good touch last time we were there. I agree. I would definitely. There's none that I would put below Jacksonville. The one thing I always look at for Jacksonville, though, is I always pray that we're there in like December or January, just because it's like a warm reprieve. It's like the one. Now, the 1 year we were there at that time of year was the first year I was on the beat, and it was so hot. It was like 80 degrees, and it was January, and the Colts season fell apart. So that was very memorable. But yeah, other than that, I like to get there's a couple seafood spots I found in Jacksonville. That's sort of my go-to thing there. But other than that, I would put them there. The next one, let's see, we're going from 10 to 9 here.
Yep.
See, I actually really like this road slate.
Yeah, it's a good road. Like we're going to put stuff in the bottom here that places that we actually like to go.
Yeah. Like, so after Jacksonville, it's like, I guess I'll put Cincinnati, just because, I mean, just as far as a trip, actually, only one of us is going to be on that trip anyway, I'm pretty sure. Actually, I don't know.
The thing about Cincinnati is that it's not really a trip necessarily.
Well, but this year there's the joint practice, and then
there's a joint practice, and then we'll probably we haven't figured out what we're doing, but like for if you cover the Colts, and you live in Indy, Cincinnati does not have to be a full road trip. In fact, it wasn't for us last year. We drove there in the morning and drove back.
Yeah. So I guess that's why I would put it there, is like the spot I'm in life. Like I just really enjoy these, just anything that's an actual trip, a destination, something new. So there's some of these I'm very excited for on this list. Cincinnati, I'm from Ohio. I've been there many times. Also, we're not staying there. We're just sort of in and out. So it doesn't really feel like one. So it's easy, but it's down. It's that next lowest run, just because it doesn't have the sizzle to it, especially as a preseason game.
Having trouble with number 9 here. This road schedule is just packed with.
It gets really good at this point.
I'm going to go Houston, and I don't hate Houston. Houston isn't anywhere near Jacksonville. I've had some good times in Houston. I've just been there a lot.
Yeah.
I covered a Super Bowl in Houston, so I was there for a week. When I covered New Orleans, they did joint practices in Houston, so I was there for 4 days then. I've just been to Houston a lot of times. And because of that, it's kind of old hat now. And the other thing is I don't have anybody that lives there anymore. So Houston will go in my 9 spot. For my 8, For my 8, so we never established parameters. Are we doing this based on how the road trip is, or how the city, or our feeling of the city in general?
I think just our excitement for
going
on that trip. It's kind of wide ranging.
Cincinnati's going to fall 8 here. Cincinnati's going to fall in the 8 spot here. And I like going to Cincinnati. I go to Cincinnati at least twice a year for Reds Brewers games. Sometimes I go a little bit more than that, depending on how the schedule works out. My kids love going to Cincinnati, but in terms of the road trip piece of this, like how excited we are for this part of the schedule, that's going to be the end of the preseason. I'm usually pretty tired. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot there. And I might be coming back right away. So I'll go Cincinnati just for those based on the road trip.
Yeah, this is where it gets very difficult for me because I like all of them. I really do. So I guess for mine, I had Jacksonville 10, Cincinnati 9. For my number 8, I'm going to go with Yeah, that's tough. I think I'm going to go with Tennessee. And again, it's another place I enjoy. I enjoy Nashville. I've only been there a couple times, so there's a few more things I want to get to do there. I have some friends in Nashville, but that's the one that we drive back from, which is, it's good to be back that night, but it's just like it's a shorter trip, and I always feel like I'm a little teaser. There's stuff I want to do, but I don't usually get to all of it because we're very in and out. And yeah, it's also one that like I said, excitement wise, you go to it every year. So I'm going to put Tennessee at number 8, and for similar reasons, I'm going to put Houston at number 7. And it's the only reason that's maybe a little bit above. I have is like I said, we're there a little bit longer, and I think I just absolutely love the food scene in Houston. I'm huge on barbecue, huge on Mexican food, and there's just so many spots there that I don't think I'm ever going to run out of. That's the good thing of a city that size. And also have a couple of really good friends there. So it ends up being a really fun weekend, which is weird to have it all the way down at number 7. But there's just so many other good ones that I'm a little bit more excited for than that.
Yeah. I just realized that we have our numbers off because we're going to the same place twice. So I'm just going to throw out in my 7 spot, the New York Sunday night game, because we get out of the press box so late on those games, and then you basically get on a plane right away the next day, and I'm so tired at the end of the trip that whatever happens there is kind of mitigated or made worse. So yeah, I'm gonna go with New York just in terms of the flight back, exhaustion, no chance to make up the sleep, that kind of thing in this one. So that we'll put that New York trip near the bottom.
Yeah, now that you make that argument, I forgot that was the Sunday night one, so I actually would probably have that below a couple of the other ones I just said. But I'll go ahead and put that in my number 6 too. Just night games are not the most thrilling thing for us. I understand this is such a we're looking at this on like how much we enjoy this. Like I know fans.
Well, that's what we promised the fans. That's what we promised the fans is what we can't.
What I'd say though, if you're a fan, fans like night games a lot more, and I get why. It's a fun. It's a fun time to take in a game. What I will say though is the trade-off to that is like, you miss that night in New York too. So maybe that's a way to like check things out during the day and then go to the game. Maybe we'll have a chance to do that. I mean, I've done some of that stuff a little bit more in New York, but I always love trips to New York. It's just it's going to be a little bit of a tease to be there for, but end up working the night and then flying out on no sleep the next day. It's like usually when you are like flying out on no sleep from New York, you want it to be because like you did, you were doing everything in the city. But not that we're going to complain about covering a game either. But yeah, it's the one night game and or the one night road game, and so that's where it's at.
I actually think if you're a fan and you're traveling the way a fan would travel, that trip is awesome. because I would guess you probably take work off on Friday. I would, if I was going to fly up there. I would probably take work off on Friday, do Friday night and Saturday night in the city, plus all of Saturday. Then you get all of Sunday to do something else. And if you take work off Monday to fly back, like we get back and we basically go straight back to work. That's just kind of the way the schedule works, because always Shane is talking the day after the game. But for a fan, you don't have to. So for for a fan, that's probably a great trip, because they also get to go back to their hotel room when the game ends at 11:30, and you and I will still be up for 3 more hours after that, or 4.
Yep, that's a good argument. If you can do it that way, if you can take Friday and Monday off. I know a lot of people get one day off. It's usually the Monday after, but yeah, that's a good way to go. I'm going to put the other New York trip a little bit higher, but I'm deciding how high I want to put it.
I got to make sure. I realized I should type this out so I don't.
I've been typing mine out. So there's 5 left.
I don't forget where I am. I think I'm still at.
There's 5. I have 5 left to rank. I have New York trip number 6.
Yeah, I don't think I'm at 6 yet. All
right, well, you got to catch up.
Yep. So this is getting tough.
It is tough.
One of the things that Nate's already hit on this. One of the best things about getting to go to these games is if you get a chance to see somebody that you wouldn't normally see, which always pushes up, which is going to push up some for us in ways that other places don't. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't love Nashville, like the Broadway part of it. I like pretty much all the rest of Nashville, but I don't like that part of it, the Broadway part. It colors it in my brain. But one of my best friends lives near there, and he'll be coming back from deployment, and so it'll be a very fun time to see him. I feel like that one's going to get pushed up because of that. I think this feels wrong. It feels wrong doing this because it's Boston and I like Boston, but I think I might go Boston here. Although Boston has a Puerto Rican restaurant that we both ate at last time they were there that I truly love. But the December time frame, the December time frame, also how difficult it can be to get in and out of Boston, plane wise and otherwise, in a 2-day trip. Like I want to spend like 4 days in Boston.
Yeah.
Because it can be tough to fly there. It can be pretty tough to fly there. And yeah, it's so that's a weird spot for that. That's a weird spot for that to be, especially since they make this. The funny story with Boston is that a couple years ago when we had our youngest, we were waiting for we had to wait for the doctor to come in, and we were just watching the Food Network, and there was this Puerto Rican dish that I'd never seen. And I was telling my wife how I wanted to try it, and she was like, "Yeah, but when are you going to be able to go to that restaurant?" And it turned out like we were there like 3 weeks later, because of the Colts schedule. So that's what I did. It has Latin sushi, but the dish that I'm talking about is chuleta can, which is it's pork chop and tenderloin as part of the cut. It's lightly fried. It was awesome. That's one of the best meals I've ever had on a trip or anywhere. And so sorry to Boston for putting you so low, but the time frame and the travel and the traffic's rough, especially going into and out of Foxborough. It's not great.
Yeah, I'm going to put Boston there. It also feels wrong. This is at my number 5 spot. I'm going to put Boston at number 5. It also feels wrong because I've only been to Boston once. It was 2 years ago, and there's a lot of things I'm looking forward to checking out that I didn't really get to do as much of that, like the harbor and whatnot. But time of year is less ideal for some of that, and also looking for tiebreakers on some of these very, very good trips. I'm just going to say, after the last 2 years, I don't need to see the Colts play the Patriots anymore. Okay. Like my first year here, it was an awesome game. It was a very fun moment. It was Sunday Night Football at home. Jonathan Taylor rips off one of the greatest runs you'll ever see to milk the game. That was fun. The last 2 years have set offensive football back about 75 decades. And, certainly I hope you'd like to think the Colts will be in a different spot this year. Patriots, we will see. But when I'm looking for tiebreakers on some of these, I am looking at game quality. So that one is a little lower on the list.
So that's in your number 5 spot?
Number 5, yep.
Number 5, this is a tough one. I think number 5 is where I'm going to put Nashville. I'm really excited to see my buddy. But like you said, it's very much, kind of all of these trips are like a half a day trip for real because we work literally the entire Sunday. You're not doing anything on Sunday necessarily. You might get dinner after the game, maybe. But for the most part, no. And I'm really excited to see him, but it has less to do with Nashville than it does with just I get to see my friend. So we'll throw Nashville in the 5 spot.
All right, you can pick number 4, and then I'll go.
In the 4 spot, I'm going to go – Minnesota. So this is another spot where I get to see people. So my hometown, Stanley, Wisconsin, is basically right between Minneapolis and Green Bay. And not everybody I know lives there, but I have friends in Minneapolis. I have family who can get there fairly easily. And that usually works out pretty well that I get to see somebody. I actually think Minneapolis is kind of an underrated city too. And we're getting there in early November, so it's not going to be super cold. The stadium is crazy. It looks so good. Plus, it's an open air press box. You're inside the stadium and you're not behind glass. That's fun too. There's a lot to like about that trip. It's just there's just such good road stuff coming up. That's the only reason it ends up 4th.
Yeah, this is a very tough part to rank because all these games are very good. I'm going to put the Giants trip number 4, and I love trips to New York, and I'm glad that the one that we've gotten so far was New Year's, so we didn't go in there at all. I'm excited to actually get to check it out. So nothing wrong with it except but I'm looking for tiebreakers. There's 2 trips to New York, so I feel like each one is going to get sapped a little bit because it's like I'm going to go there twice. Not that I'm complaining about that, but it's just it's not. If it was one New York trip, it would be higher on the list than number 4. But there's 2 of them, so I'm going to put one of them at number 4. But number 3, I'm going to put Minnesota. A lot of the reasons you said, I absolutely love watching games there. It's one of the most fun environments, especially to cover a game with that open air press box. I really like Minneapolis. I've been there a lot of times, and I feel like I know that city. And I also have some very, very good friends there that I'm going to get to see. So every time that I have a trip to Minneapolis, I'm really pumped for that. But when I'm looking for tiebreakers, that was very close to being higher on the list. But game quality, I don't think the Vikings will be very watchable this year. So who knows, though? A couple of years, the one other time we were there, the Colts were up 33-0 in a game and lost. So maybe don't count out the Vikings.
Number 3 spot for me. This is crazy for me to say this because it's my favorite city in the country. But we're going there a little later than I would like. Denver. I love Denver. I interned there. I've been there a couple times for vacation or for other stuff. But we're going there on December 15th. And the problem with December 15th is, I'm going to look it up. But the reason I love Denver so much is that you have a chance to climb. The last time we were out there, I climbed Bears Peak outside of Boulder, which, I mean, it's not that big. The climb is high, but it's not like you're like doing a 14 or anything like that. But you're right there on the Front Range, so it's a fun thing. I just don't know if it's going to be like the kind of weather that you really want. Yeah, December weather, we're looking at like 49 to 45. Plus, if you're going to hike, especially like if you even to do a short hike, on game day, you got to get up early. Yeah, cold. Not my favorite thing to hike in the cold. So it drops it to 3, whereas normally in almost any other schedule, Denver's my number 1 trip.
Yeah, this is where it gets really hard because they're just ranking really good destinations. My number 2, that was your number 3?
That's what I've got. I've got 2 spots left.
Okay. Well, I will go with my number 2 because I had Minnesota number 3. My number 2 is Green Bay. I've never been to Green Bay. It's weird because I've covered 2 NFC North teams and never got to Green Bay. I never got to be on the traveling team to it. Very completely different, type of place from all the other type of NFL cities you go to, which is kind of exciting to me. But really, it's the appeal of getting to go to a game at Lambeau Field. As someone who just grew up as a football junkie, I really look to environments like that. Like I every time I get to go to one of these iconic games or iconic moments, especially, and this isn't a playoff game, but like I did a playoff game at Seattle that I'll always remember. Getting to hear the 12s be as loud as they were, but Green Bay to get to see, a game there. Now, granted, it's weird because on one part of it, it's like, as far as the weekend goes, it's very nice for us to be in Green Bay in mid-September. But as people who listen to this podcast probably know, I love snow games. I always wanted to see a snow game at Lambeau, and selfishly, I get to cover these from the press box, so it's very nice for me and not the people involved. So part of me wishes it was, randomly late in the year and maybe have some elements to it, but also it makes the rest of the weekend easy. So Green Bay should be pretty fun. And like I said, I think it could be a very interesting game too, with 2 young quarterbacks and big test early on in the season for the Colts. And so for the very first road trip of the year, it's pretty interesting for that to be, there's not a lot of NFL cities I haven't been to, but that's one of them. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, my number 2 spot, I'm going with the second New York trip. I love New York. Love it. The cold weather doesn't bother me. Kind of like walking around in the cold. You just get like a venti coffee from Starbucks, and I'm sure there's probably a better place I could find to get coffee from too. But you get a venti coffee, just kind of walk around. Being in New York right after Christmas sounds kind of awesome, especially since we didn't really go in there last time because we were there on December 31st and we thought we might never get back out. But I love New York. I love everything. I love the history. I love the pizza. I love the other restaurants that are available there. I like the city. That's it. And then my number 1 on this list is Green Bay. Green Bay, I'm from Wisconsin, which you all know. So like Green Bay, I will probably get to see at least my dad. Maybe some brothers will be over there. And then there's also just the piece of being in Wisconsin and being home. Cheese curds, that's where I'm from. It's fun to be there. It's also the place that most reminds me how lucky I am I get to do this job, because the first NFL game I ever went to was when I was 20, and it was with my dad, and it was a cold game at Lambeau Field. So that's a reminder too, is just that like this there was a time in my life when the NFL seemed very, very far away and hard to, and like almost like in another world. And so being in Green Bay reminds me of that more than anything. So not to get all sappy or anything, but that's why that's the number one spot for me.
No, I feel that. That's the thing is like these are sometimes they're new experiences. Sometimes they are just kind of make us feel a certain way because you've been there a bunch. My number one is Denver, which will probably always be my number one. If Denver's on the schedule, it's going to be my number one. Partly because one of my best friends lives there, but bigger than that, or just I guess equal to that, is because of that, we go on a big hiking trip. And we lucked out a couple of years ago when the Colts played one of the worst football games in the history of the universe in Denver, but it was on a Thursday night, and it gave us that whole weekend. This year, it's the normal Sunday start, but I'll probably try and find a way if I can to get in there Friday. And that Saturday of hiking is just glorious. Now, I agree that I'd rather be a little earlier in the season, but my understanding is that December could just be hit or miss. It could be not great for hiking, but it could also sometimes it still feels a little fallish at that time, depending on what's going on. It's more like they say like February, March is like disaster time to hike in Denver, but December can be still nice. And if it's one of those things that like it's the type of company I have there, even if it's less ideal for that, I mean, I'm still going to have a great time. So Denver's top of the list for me.
Also in Denver, if you truly love green chili cheeseburgers like I do, Denver is a good place to get them.
I got to try that out on that last trip, so I'll be looking for more of that. The breweries there are great. I'm just like, yep. I just enjoy everything kind of about it. Again, as we're talking game quality, that could be one of the lower ones. Broncos do not look very good, but
you don't like Bo Nix?
What's that? Sean Payton said that he saw flashes of Patrick Mahomes in him. So who knows? Maybe we'll see greatness on a field that day. But to me, that's one of the rare trips that like game quality really doesn't factor in because the weekend itself is so cool. And I don't know. It's interesting. It's a 4:25 start. It's the only one other than the Jets trip that's not a 1 p.m. start. And coming off the shenanigans I'll be doing that Saturday, I will be okay with that.
You know that's like a 1:25 start or like
I know.
Up there, right?
I know, but my body clock, it's a little easier.
Yeah,
but no. Hey, this road slate. I mean, the main thing that sums it up, like it got once we got like 8 and up, I liked every thing about. I liked every place, and so this is an awesome road slate, especially like, and that's true. Obviously, we built this around our kind of selfish desires, but I think if you're a fan, even a lot of these reasons apply as far as like there's every place in the top 8 that at least on I think on both of our lists they have the same group in the top 8 is either amazing food, amazing things to check out in the city, or amazing venues that kind of iconic places to actually go and watch a game. So if you're a Colts fan, if you haven't watched a game in Lambeau Field or Minnesota, I mean those are like 2 incredible stadiums to check that out in, and then every other place on here, I think you can find a lot of fun stuff to do. Honestly, it's a much better top to bottom road slate than last year. This list would have been a lot easier to rank last year, which were not as cool of destinations, except for the one at the top. Germany will be untouchable to anything on here. So that's kind of my only, that's not even a complaint because that was such a bonus, but I do wish there was an international game, but hey, we got one last year. And so beggars can't be choosers.
You forgot to mention that Jacksonville is still on this, which that one trip that the 17 hours I spend in Jacksonville or 18 hours or whatever it ends up being really drags down the whole thing.
That is the punishment. It is interesting though, that like this year, the preseason game in Cincinnati, which I guess the practice makes it a little different, but it's possible in and out for 2 days. But last year they had a preseason game in Philadelphia and I spent 5 days there because of the way the joint practice schedule went. So very different way to go in the preseason. But normally you're in Buffalo in the preseason, so I guess this is a little different for you.
I almost always end up having to go to Buffalo in the preseason, so I am happy to not be going to Buffalo. I mean, and that's actually not – I don't hate Buffalo. I kind of like Buffalo. I've just been a lot. I've just been there a lot of times.
Just preseason trips. I mean, we talk about game quality.
A
You
lot
can't
of times recently.
in that realm.
And this we'll just let we'll let the listeners in on a little inside joke. For a long time there, I finally broke the streak, but for a long time there, every time I went to Buffalo, I got very sick afterwards. So, the streak's broken now, but I just didn't need another Buffalo trip just because I've just been there a lot. It's not as much as I like the city, it's not necessarily a city that offers like a ton of extra stuff to do. If you've been there a lot, and I just kept getting sick there. So, yeah, no Buffalo on the schedule. They have to come here. Their riders can get sick.
I hope they don't get sick, but that's
I didn't say I hoped.
I
didn't say I hoped. We're just working with the previously established parameters.
And yet I have a feeling you would still pick Buffalo while sick over Jacksonville.
Yes, Buffalo with 104 fever over Jacksonville healthy. And 75 and 72 degree temperatures.
If it makes you feel better, the Colts would agree. They play like they're sick in Jacksonville every year. So
I think that's the thing I understand most about that streak. People are like, how do they always play so bad in Jacksonville? I'm like, have you been? Have you been? Because, if you've been, then you get it. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
And just in case anybody wants to like bring this up, because we had this discussion yesterday while watching practice. Someone was like, oh, I had a great time there. They weren't actually in Jacksonville. They were cheating. They were in a different locale that's on the actual ocean. That's not Jacksonville. Those are other municipalities.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I say is that the reason I like that trip a little bit better is just that you can drive to those places and they are nice, but yeah, it's always a weird trip. It's always an unforgettable trip. Like I said, I saw the Colts season go up in flames the one year. Another year I see ripped off signs on the side of a highway guiding you where you're going to go. Who knows what we'll see this year? Probably something crazy.
Yeah, the one that someone was throwing out, they were like, we were on Amelia Island. Do you know how that's so far away? It's so far away. Same thing with like TPC Sawgrass. You're pretty far away. That does not count. That is a different part. That's not Jacksonville. It's Jacksonville adjacent. That's the best I'll give you.
Yeah.
Also, Anthony Richardson's arm looked good. We've written plenty about it, but it was good to see him throwing well. It seems like his shoulder's in a good place. The way I've been thinking about that is we can kind of move past that now. Like now it's not so much about how his arm is recovering, and it's more just about, how does this player take the next, like what do they get from him? Because we still don't really know. We saw flashes. We haven't seen a ton. That's the thing for me now is just, we can move past the arm a little bit and whether or not he can still throw and look more at how is he growing as a quarterback? What's he going to be like in his second year? Is he going to be more ready? That's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have him throwing, and from the way it looked to me, he took all the snaps that a starter would normally take in practice. So I'm glad that we're not dealing with the, where is he in his recovery, and we can move on to the how does he fit in the offense? How are they building the offense around him? What mistakes is he making? That kind of talk instead of worrying about the shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, it's super freeing, at least in the moment. Of course, this conversation is not going to just disappear. I mean, it's just one of those when he takes hits, which will happen because he runs a lot and he's a football player, and especially when he starts, he has injuries, which, again, pretty much every quarterback has anymore to some degree. The conversation and the cynicism is going to ramp back up. But it is very freeing right now to just have had proof of life of this recovery and that he looks in this setting, which is very watered down, but at least just like physical ability, raw ability, he looks like that guy that I went down to check out at his pro day when he was trying to show off every throw under the sun. And then the guy that we saw, put those into a football field, in that comeback against the Rams. There's one throw yesterday I tweeted out that's just like he decided just to go down the field, and it's the most effortless deep ball you'll ever see. And it feels like the ball just travels for 10 years and then lands kind of on a perfect spiral right to its target. So we saw all those. If there was any fear about this injury taking out something and him not having it anymore in terms of a physical gift, yesterday was a good glimpse into that, putting those fears away. And so it was, I think, a little symbolic that he was there on his 22nd birthday when it's like he was truly and utterly crushed when he got hurt last year and couldn't answer those doubts and couldn't play the game he loves and could really not be the leader of a team that's trying to push for the playoffs. And he was looking so forward just to throwing again in the cold of February, just to move that arm and see the ball go again. And so to get to this point where he spent his 22nd birthday out there throwing that way and feeling and looking like the guy that got drafted number 4 overall, it honestly was like he said when I asked him, was like the perfect way to spend a birthday. So I thought it was just fun to kind of see the life come back in both the arm, the personality. What's that?
I can think of better ways to spend a birthday.
That's true. That's true. But I honestly think if you asked Anthony last January that he would have picked this. Coming off.
I'm just saying, I could think of a few better ways.
There's probably some better ways. But no, it was
not being at work would be great.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I know every year on my birthday I'm out at training camp, and I don't have quite the same enthusiasm. But I'm also not a quarterback. But it was it's just fun to be past that. It's fun to be on to other conversations with this team where it's more like, it was also interesting to me we never really got to I don't think we ever saw Anthony Richardson do something with Jonathan Taylor on a football field before yesterday. I mean, really, like he came back for 1 week Jonathan Taylor came back for 1 week of practice that we weren't able to watch because it was regular season. They shared 2 snaps together. I think one play, Anthony faked it to him, and then Anthony got hurt. And yesterday, even as watered down as it is, it was just kind of cool to see the 2 of them lined up in the backfield, and then hear the 2 of them talk about each other and what it's like to build this out. Whereas last year, it was so just. That was the other thing that kind of hit me yesterday. I saw Jonathan Taylor and seeing the life come back in him and the normalcy come back to this situation. Just off everything last year was so strange. Even once he came back and he had the contract, then it was like the post-Anthony Richardson time. And then he dealt with the thumb injury. And it was just like, it was a stressful calendar year for Jonathan Taylor. And then it ended up being very stressful down stretch of the season for Anthony Richardson. So yesterday to me brought out like the excitement and just some of the joy of those 2 who are going to, get to learn each other as players and as people, and try and they are the keys to this team hitting the highest ceiling possible right now. Like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of the reasons to be alarmed or skeptical about the Colts lying in their secondary and what they haven't done there. But if you want to talk yourself into like this team taking a really big leap and being something super exciting, it's that backfield. And I think that's what I'm saying. The health conversation is not going to go away. That's just the risk and the nature of their playing styles and of those 2 players and playing 17 games. But with that caveat of if they can stay on the field, like I think the 2 of them could be one of the most electric things we've ever seen, really. I think outside of Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey, I don't know that there's been a more talented combination, and we didn't get to see it at all last year, and they still went 9-8. So
I tried to find it, and I tried to find one because the other thing with Cam is that version of Cam when McCaffrey was there was different.
Yep.
And so, like, I really don't think in terms of just dynamic running ability, I don't think that there's ever been two of them paired together. If they get them healthy and based on and if they're playing at the levels that we've seen them play at in the past, I don't think that there's ever been at the NFL level a running back quarterback combination that could test you in the running game the way these two would be able to.
Especially when you bake in the Shane Steichen element of that. That's it's incredibly exciting. The flip side of it is that's unfortunately why they've talked themselves into not bolstering the secondary as well. We can score 56 points a game, so we don't need to. That part I question, but it does go back to the fact that it's hard to make a football argument against what they have cooking in this offense, especially the run game right now with those three pillars. I'm just excited to watch it. Everything we went through we wrote a bazillion stories on Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and never got to see those three forces together. And now we're in the clear of, through the contract dispute, through the injuries, for now, this is where it's going to start to be fun and pretty entertaining.
Yep. And we've got some time to wait before that. We have a chance for pretty soon. We got a couple more weeks here, one more OTA. The Colts have a mandatory minicamp that we will be at. And then, like I said, the Colts will go on vacation. We will go on vacation. Hopefully you, the listener, will go on vacation. And all I can hope is that none of us are going on vacation in Jacksonville, Florida.
Just had to do it.
For the Colts Cover-2 podcast, I am Joel Erickson. This has been Nate Atkins. He doesn't hate Jacksonville as much as I do, but I'll get him there.